Hello and welcome. So basically, this year in the NFL might be another year where there's just some wild stuff happening. After this Sunday, there was so much that went on and happened. Not even on Sunday. Thursday had a wild game. Monday even had a wild game. It was a really good week of the NFL. With all the BS that went on and everything, obviously. There were some small things that happened. Obviously, they were sad and everything. But regardless, it's just fun to have football back. It was a rough weekend for your boy when it came to picks and everything. I basically broke even on almost everything, and I mean, let's just get into talking about these games. So I'll start with the Thursday night game. So the Thursday night game saw the Rams take on the Bills, and it was more of just the Bills playing against the Bills. It felt like wow, did the Bills look dominant? There's a reason I guess they're Super Bowl favorites, huh? Because they just shut down the Rams basically. You could tell that only having Cooper Kupp hurt the offense a little bit. It basically felt like he was the only one out there for Matt Stafford. The offense was just so shaky. And then defensively, the Bills on the excuse me, let me rephrase that. The Bills offense on the Rams defense just felt like they were moving the ball up and down the field. Jalen Ramsey got toyed around with basically, and yeah, it was a bad game for the Rams. I don't think that's indicative of what they'll do this season. It's still very early. It's week one, obviously, but I think there's it's not more of the takeaway from the Rams, it's more of how impressed I am with the Bills. In my power rankings, I had them at 2, and I knew they were good, but man, they looked really good. Josh Allen looks like he's going to be that dude this year, and after the way they played that game, the Bills just look dominant. So coming into week 2, the Rams should look like they should be taking a step up, but now it's going to be a real question who can actually stop these Bills. All right, so I'm just going to go down the list basically of games. I know there's some big news to get to for specific teams. I'll just get to that when I go to those teams. So this game, I really want to talk about this game too because this game was so wild. The Colts and Texans, finished in a 20-20 tie. The Texans were up, I think 20-3 almost at one point, if I remember right. Or it was at least 20-6 for sure. And then just I don't know, it was just the whole game just felt off. Jonathan Taylor is still him. That's confirmed. Pittman had a really good day. Ryan looked shaky at first, but then played a little bit better. The defense looked good towards the second half, but just more of this is more of it's 2020 tie. It's a 2020 tie. It's whatever. Colts should have definitely won that game, but a tie is still pretty disgusting. But the biggest storyline is Lovie Smith. What was that call? It was fourth and 3, 4th and 2. One of those ones. I can't remember exactly. And he just punted it. He was on the Colts 49. I get you don't want to lose, but not playing to lose is just a whole different mentality that you can't have. The fact that this hasn't made more news really either. It's people are just kind of brushing this game aside, oh, it's the Colts Texans, whatever. That division kind of stinks. But the fact that this coach played for a tie, what a wild world. I couldn't imagine going into a locker room after we had a chance to win and our coach punted away and basically in the press conference said, "Oh yeah, hey, a tie is better than losing." Yes, technically, but is it though? Especially it almost feels like it was a loss for the Texans because first off, they were up a lot in that game. They probably should have won, but somehow the Colts found a way to just stay in it enough to where they had 2 late touchdowns, were able to do something. But just the punting to play for the tie, I just don't get that at all. If I'm in the locker room too, I wonder what message that sends that, oh, our coach is going to play for a tie instead of trying to play to win the game. I get you give the Colts good field position. They might have a chance to win, but have confidence in yourself to get it. For the Giants, when the Giants game we're going to get to later, that was all basically not the same situation, but semi-similar, and they pulled out the balls and went for it. As a Colts fan, I'm happy. The Colts definitely probably could have lost that game, and now instead of losing, they escaped with the tie, which is still kind of disgusting, but just that play calling by Lovey, I'm just baffled that they'd rather tie than lose. Especially because they're an up-and-coming organization. Nobody sees them as a Super Bowl team or even a playoff team, I would think, this year. So why not try to play for the win? Try to get, because all these division games matter. If all the division teams split and then somehow they end up winning, Texans end up winning this game instead of tying it. That could have came huge down the road. But now I just don't get it. When it came to another game, the Philadelphia Eagles and Lions. The Eagles looked very dominant early. All the running backs felt like they got touches for the end zone, and then somehow the Lions just were able to crawl back. It's kind of what they did, similar to the shades of last year towards the end of the season, where you look away, the Eagles were up 2 scores, I want to say, and all of a sudden it's oh crap, it's a touchdown game. Now it's a 3-point game. Like, what is going on? I mean, regardless, it's going to be interesting to see now just, like, what the Lions do coming into next week now. Because that game was basically, like, the Lions looked like they put up a little bit of fight in the first and, like, second quarter-ish. And then, like, late second, early third to later third, it just looked like it was all Eagles. And then fourth quarter came around, and then somehow it was 38-35. The Lions have done a really good job of, like, just staying in these games and not completely going away. Which is really good for them, like, trying to change their culture around and everything. And when it comes to the Eagles, I mean, oh, man, that's a really good win they got. Because, I mean, they looked pretty impressive. I mean, regardless, Jalen Hurts wasn't fully, like, he could have had a monster fantasy day, or a stat day, too, with, like, rushing touchdowns and everything. But the other guy, he would get him down there, and the other guys would get it. And then now with the whole Dak injury that I'll be talking about a little bit later with the Cowboys, I mean, this division became wide open for the Eagles now, and they have huge 6 weeks to capitalize. So this was a huge win week 1. They were one of the other two. They were one of 3 NFC East teams to win. So, I mean, with the Cowboys looking like they were probably going to be in trouble, this is the Eagles' time to shine, and this could be a very huge few weeks for them with Dak out, where they can take a handle of this division and potentially win it already. For another game, Baker made his return to not play in Cleveland, but play against Cleveland. And that game, that was another one of those games that's just wild. It ended up being 26-24 Cleveland. I believe they won. I think it was game-winning field goal. I don't know how much time was exactly. I'm, like, fairly confident game-winning. If not, they had, like, barely any time left. But one of the big things coming out of that game is the fake spike, where they should have had time run off, and it probably should have been the end of the game, but the refs, from what everyone on the outside seemed like, either the refs didn't know the rules or they just, like, whatever that got to them in the game, like, whatever it was, they ended up saying some. I don't even know how I can't even, like, say how they worded it. They want to say, like, he faked the spike perfectly or something, and then, like, he was able to spike it then, so it didn't count. Whatever it was really weird. And then Cleveland is winning that game. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield look like they're going to be disgusting together. I mean, there was an I formation where they lined them up and I got chills honestly thinking about it, because it's just like, ooh, that's going to be a dangerous formation potentially for them to run. I mean, Brissett, I feel like Baker played all right. I mean, he could have played definitely a little bit better. It felt like they got big plays on some busted coverages. And Christian McCaffrey felt like he had some big yards here and there, but he didn't have the monster game we usually see out of him. So, I mean, regardless, I mean, the Panthers, it's not a bad loss. They only lost by 2. They have a chance to, like, look forward in the upcoming weeks to see potentially, like, to build on this where they were. And when it comes to the Browns, this is probably a good win. I don't think, they weren't favored in the line flip. So basically any win, obviously they can get without Deshaun Watson is going to be amazing. But this is a good confidence win for them just to show that, because, I mean, the run game looked pretty well. I mean, it could have been a little bit better, obviously. But, I mean, Kareem Hunt did his on the ground. Nick Chubb did pretty good on the ground as well. And, I mean, Jacoby Brissett did enough to put him in positions to win. So this is going to be, I don't remember who this team plays week 2, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Browns recover from week 2. And then the same goes for the Panthers. Like, is there still all the confidence in Baker, which I'm assuming there would be, or is there starting to be some doubts now? But, I mean, regardless, this might be a bit of an overreaction to the game, but I still think that Baker did all right. I mean, obviously he could have done a little bit better, like I said, but overall he did, I think, well enough to put him in positions to win. It's just, ball didn't happen to roll their way this game, and he'll just look to improve going into the next week. The next game was the monsoon game. It was the Bears against the 49ers, and this is probably one of the shockers of the week. I mean, it was an absolute, like, porridge of rain, and it was terrible conditions. I mean, for fantasy players, if you weren't named, like, Deebo Samuel, you basically did nothing. Justin Fields had two really good plays, where basically that's why the Bears won the game, is he was able to make 2 really big plays, and the 49ers just weren't able to. The 49ers, I mean, they didn't look bad. Trey Lance looked all right in offense, but there's so many people bashing him already, like, hey, let's get Jimmy G in, let's get Jimmy G in, let's get Jimmy G in. And it's like, I get it, because they might have flipped Trey Lance a little bit too early, but it's just kind of surprising how quick everyone is so quick to, like, want to change it when it was a monsoon game that, like, I don't think, like, for example, what would Jimmy G do in that game better than Trey Lance did? Trey Lance got, like, I want to say 7 or 8 first downs, and, like, 3 or 4 of them were with his legs and were, like, impressive runs that, like, he fought through a guy maybe even and was able to score. So I don't know if Jimmy G would have helped him in that game, obviously, and when it comes to moving forward, I mean, maybe, I guess, like, I could see why people potentially want to play Jimmy just because of the history, but I just feel like so many people are quick to write off Trey Lance right away. I don't know what he's going to be because, I mean, obviously he didn't put together too well of a performance, but yet again, like I said, it was such a torrential downpour that, I mean, that Chicago game, basically, you can, like, wash it off the map. Like, if you looked at the weather, going in the game, it was, like, the 49ers were, like, minus 300 favorites, but I bet you if the odds makers could have gone back in, like, or could have gone forward in time a little bit and saw, like, what the weather was going to be, I bet you that would have been, like, a pick'em game or anything. Just because, like, the way the weather was, I mean, it was hard to do anything on that field. So, I mean, regardless, I mean, congrats to the Bears. This was a pretty impressive win regardless because of how I mean, like I said, torrential downpour, either team could have won, but the Bears were the team that won, and Justin Fields had some moments here and there. So this is good for a Bears team that a lot of people think are going to finish bottom in the power rankings, but now they have potential to, I don't know, is this going to be the spark that makes them play a little bit better or what? It's going to be fun to see what the Bears do now moving forward. And then when it comes to the 49ers, you basically just, I feel like, have to erase that game. I mean, the weather was so bad, and there's not much you can do about it. You just got to focus, I think, moving on to the next week. And don't write off Trey Lance just yet. I would be interested to see how he does the following week now because there's going to be a lot of doubters and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see what this kid can do next week going into the next game. The next game, it was Jacksonville and the Commanders, and I'll be honest, I'm surprised. Like, I'm honestly surprised that Carson Wentz was able to win that game. Would have been nice if he would have done that against the Jags last year with the Colts, but obviously he didn't. It's whatever. But no, I thought the Jags had that game won. I mean, they were up a decent amount. I think it was like 8-ish around, like with like 8 to 7 minutes left. I mean, the way they played, they basically had that game won. I mean, there's a play where Carson Wentz threw it like 2 feet and Josh Allen picked it off, and it looked like the Jaguars have all the momentums, and then all of a sudden, I was watching some other games, and you just see 2 highlights of the Commanders getting one big play, and they score, and then the Commanders, yet again, they came down the field, and they ended up winning on the last, it wasn't last second, but it was like their last drive, they ended up coming down and scoring, and then Trevor Lawrence threw. This is like my biggest issue with this game is I thought Trevor Lawrence played all right. I thought the Jags should have closed. They had a lot of drops. I'll admit that too. Like ETN on a 4th and goal. I mean, he literally like hit him right in the hands. That has to be caught. I get it happens, but that's a play that has to be made for them. And then that last interception that I don't know what the hell he saw or what he was doing. That looked like a ball that was a mix of I'm going to chuck it down the field but make it go out of bounds, or I'm going to chuck it down the field but maybe my guy will catch it there. But the way he threw it, there was like no one really in the area. He was just kind of chucking it downfield, and then all of a sudden the DB catches it on the edge. Yeah, they basically lose. And that was pretty frustrating to watch. I thought the Jags basically, if you're a Jags fan, obviously, I mean, the Jags had it won. It felt like, I mean, most of the times, I remember I was listening to a Bill Simmons podcast earlier this week, and he was talking about how he's like, oh, I thought the Jaguars had that won. I was shocked when I came back and saw, like, wait, the Commanders won? And yet Carson Wentz was the first Commander to throw 4 touchdowns since, like, 2015, I think, or whatever. So, I mean, regardless, I mean, it's a good game for the Commanders. I mean, that was a game they should have won. It was a lot scarier for them for the whole game than it should have been, but they were able to win. When it comes to Jacksonville, I mean, it's just a young team that needs to get a little bit better. I mean, this is a terrible game to drop. I mean, I get they were underdogs, but this is a game they could have easily won. They had them handled and contained in for, like, most of the game, and then all of a sudden just little bits here and there just got in the way, and then the Jags just ended up blowing it. This is promising for a Jags team, though, that, like, they were in a game like this. Because right now, nothing's better than experience, and with how young that team is, this is probably going to be a good learning experience for them because they basically had the game won. If they can just complete, like, a few more plays, could catch another pass or two, then the game's won, and then they have nothing else to stress about. But in the end, they end up losing, and it's going to be interesting to see what the Jags do now because it's going to be a question of can they close, because they showed promise that they have the talent to be able to keep, like, potentially end games. I know it's just the Commanders, but still, the Jags haven't been much better either, and they went down pretty early, but then, like, those middle quarters, they were coming back and looking like they could be good. So it's just going to be interesting to see what they do now with the rest of their season. Next game is Miami and New England, and it is starting to become scary hours for New England. Mac Jones, thankfully, just has back spasms, so he should hopefully make the next game, but I know they never play well in Miami either, and it might be a bit of an overreaction to call them dead, but I'm not going to say they're dead. I think I saw something where Chris Collinsworth said they're going to, or sorry, not Chris Collinsworth. I saw they were Colin Cowherd said they're going to finish like 6-11, and they're probably not going to make the playoffs. And I mean, he might be onto something there, but I'm not going to go that far just yet. But this team looked pretty scary. I mean, I don't know what to expect. I mean, they just there's so many questions around the offense to begin with, and then now there's going to be more questions because of the performance they had together. And I mean, the Dolphins look good, honestly, that game. I mean, that 4th and 7 play, that was a huge ballsy call, and great play. They missed the tackle, and then Jalen Waddle's gone for the end zone. That's a huge play in the game. And that basically this team didn't look like the Patriots that day. They had some penalties that you usually don't see from them. There's a lot of things it's just like this team seems like it's going to be interesting what they do this year. The Patriots looked really shaky, and this game was definitely a cause for some concern for them. When it comes to the Dolphins, I mean, the Dolphins played really well, and they proved that, hey, we want to contend this division too. Now, the real question is, will they be able to do this against Josh Allen and play this well? That's going to be the real question for them. But as for week 1, I mean, it was a pretty impressive win. Their head coach got the first win. Yeah, it was an awesome first win for Mike McDaniel. Happy for him, and it's just good for young coaches. But yeah, it's gonna be fun to see what this Dolphins team is now with him at the helm. They definitely had some good stuff. They looked like they were running. And then when it comes to the Patriots, I mean, the real question is, who are they offensively? I mean, they just looked. That's not the same Patriots team they have looked in the past, so it's just going to be interesting to see where production comes from their offense and what happens with Mac Jones. For the Ravens-Jets, I mean, not much to talk about. Ravens pretty much dominated. Lamar looks like he should be making that big player money. I mean, it is the Jets, and it might have taken Lamar a little bit to go, and he had a sweet no-look pass. He had some good bombs to Devin Duvernay. I mean, Lamar is just so good at football. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I know it was the Jets, but if he can make throws like this semi-consistently all season, then the Ravens are going to be a real problem. And I mean, Mark Andrews did have a quiet day a little bit, if you fantasy number wise and stat wise. But I mean, regardless, it's just it's good to see the Ravens offense moving, and they got a really good win against the Jets. But it's just going to be interesting now because the whole thing about the Ravens right now is the Lamar contract. So it's going to be interesting to see if Lamar plays himself into a better contract this season or what's going to happen. But basically after this first week, I mean, I know it's the Jets, but they're still an NFL team, and they're looking to get good too. So it's looking like Lamar might need to be making a little bit of that money. Another thriller was the Steelers and the Bengals. This is just I've been saving this for a lot of the episode, but I'm not going to try to go on this tangent now. But the missed kicks, man, holy hell this weekend. There's so many missed kicks here and there. It's insane. Evan McPherson had one blocked, missed another one from 20 yards. I know they had to shoot the long snapper. That might have messed up the timing with everything, but I mean, that was a game. Joe Burrow threw 5 or 6 interceptions. The Steelers somehow, the Steelers wanted the game-winning field goal in overtime after the Bengals punted away with 15 seconds left and all this and all that. There's so much to question, but overall, I just mean, the Bengals somehow stayed in this game even though they shouldn't have lost, which is good for them because, I mean, Joe Burrow looked awful today. I mean, it's just not on him. I mean, he got sacked 6 times. It felt like he threw 6 interceptions. I mean, the defense was just getting to him, man. It's going to be a problem for the Bengals if they just can't keep that guy protected because they really, I mean, I watched it with Andrew Luck, and he would just get hit after hit after hit, and then his career got shortened, and sure enough, 2 years after he retires, the Colts have the best O-line they've had in forever, and I just don't want to see that happen with Joe Burrow, so they need to figure out what's going on with the O-line. And when it just comes to the game, I mean, Steelers didn't do anything too impressive. I mean, they won the game, but it might cost them T.J. Watt for the season potentially. I mean, there's rumor he might only need rehab for his pec, but there's no say fully, so it's just gonna be interesting for either of these teams. I mean, it was a good divisional battle. The Steelers were able to scrape away, and this can go a long ways down the road for the division now and potentially playoff scenarios. This was a huge win for the Steelers, but losing T.J. Watt, that definitely sent some alarms going off in that building for how good they're going to be. Because it's hard. T.J. Watt's a good player and even probably better person. He's an even better person, I assume. And you can't locker room presence like that. You can't just replace with any guy. So that's going to be scary for them. And when it comes to the Bengals, hopefully Rashard Higgins is okay with his concussion, and just hopefully Joe Burrow can clean it up a little bit from what he did this week. I mean, they still almost won. That's what's crazy. They still almost won, but Joe Burrow needs to clean it up a little bit so they can play a little bit better. In a game where the Falcons, just seeing the Falcons, I mean, the Falcons lose by 1 to the Saints after being up by so much at one point. It's just when is it going to end for Falcons fans, honestly? I feel bad for them, honestly, at this point. Like, it just has to feel awful to, no matter what the lead is, you just don't feel okay and think your team can win. I mean, they are a younger team that hopefully will grow from this, but it's just, at this point, it's starting to become, like, almost laughable how many, like, blown leads they've had. It was a great win by the Saints, though. Jameis Winston had a meh day. I mean, he could have definitely done better. Kamara, meh on the ground, could have done a little bit better. But, I mean, yeah, regardless, Jameis did enough. Jameis finished with 23 of 34. He got the 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's all they needed. They ended up coming back and win. And it was a really impressive comeback win for the Saints, but I don't know. Now it's just a question of, was it more of the Saints making a great comeback, or was it the Falcons doing what they always do and somehow find a way to choke away a game? When it comes to the Chiefs and the Chargers, or excuse me, when it comes to the Chiefs and the Cardinals, I mean, oh boy, Chiefs look really, really good. I mean, I would say right now the Chiefs and the Chiefs, Bengals, Bucks are the 3 teams that, excuse me, Chiefs, Bills, Bucks. Sorry. Chiefs, Bills, Bucks are the 3 teams that look the best right now. Now, I know I'll get in the Bucks game a little bit more, but for sure offensively, I mean the Chiefs and I know the Cardinals defense isn't that good either. They look like they're going to be pretty bad this year defensively, but Patrick Mahomes had 5 of them things with no interceptions. I mean, that's pretty good. He's pretty good. And just when it comes to the Cardinals, I mean, 44-21 is not even close to what that game was. It was like 21-0, I think, at some point. Or it's either like 14-7 or 21-7. I mean, Cardinals just weren't in it to begin with. There's so much going on with that building now. Is it Kyler? There's plays coming out that, like, Kyler's not picking up blitzes that you should easily be able to see. Quarterback coaches and quarterbacks are coming out, pointing out stuff. It's just, there's so much noise going on in that locker room and everything now, and around the building, and now it's almost scary. I feel bad for the Cardinals. With how bad their defense is, Kyler has to be playing a little bit better. And with no DeAndre Hopkins for 6 weeks, I mean, this team is just, I don't know. I don't know what this team's really, I honestly just don't know what this Cardinals team is right now. I mean, they just need to figure some stuff out going into the next week. There's not much to say about it. The Chiefs look amazing and dominant, look like they're a Super Bowl contender, and the Cardinals just look like, for a bit, they looked like the same playoff team last year that just after halfway through the season, they just can't seem to figure it out. Okay, Packers, Vikings. Aaron Rodgers, another week 1 where the Packers look god-awful. I mean, it's been, 3 years now in a row for Matt LaFleur where their first week look awful. Now, Christian Watson catches that one deep ball. Might be a completely different game. It hits him right in the breadbasket, and he drops it. It's a little nice over the shoulder. Like, I don't know, it literally was that, and he just dropped it. And, I mean, it went right through his hands, and that basically set the tone for the whole day. And the Vikings, I don't think it's more of what the Packers did wrong, as in, like, they'll be fine. They usually struggle sometimes, but the Vikings looked really good. That defense looked amazing. Justin Jefferson couldn't be stopped. He was just blowing coverages left and right. And Kirk Cousins did enough to keep him. I mean, he didn't have the most amazing day, but Kirk Cousins did good enough to win him the game for sure. And it just looks like that getting that Rams offensive coordinator for them, I think Kevin O'Connell is his name, getting him is going to be potentially huge for the Vikings. Because, I mean, if their offense is going to look like that every week against the Packers defense is supposedly one of the best that it's ever had in the while. I mean, they looked awesome. Justin Jefferson just couldn't get guarded. He looks like he might have a big year. And it's just fun to see this Vikings team now with the coach. Now you can see almost, it's going to be interesting to see like how Kirk Cousins does, because there was issues with him and Zimmer and then there was stuff coming out now that they could feel the tension with each other, and it just made things awkward and everything. So now with the coach that's finally behind him as of now, it's going to be fun to see if like they can keep this going, because the Vikings showed out really well this week, and I was pretty impressed with how they played. When it comes to the Packers, it's just, you can't really talk much about them. We got to see what they do next week. If they play like this next week, then it might cause for some concern, but the Packers look good on the ground, so that's something to carry into the next week. They just need to figure out the passing game a little bit. When it came to Chargers-Raiders, I mean, the Chargers played really well. Keenan Allen looked like he was going to be unstoppable until he hurt his hammy. And then after that, Justin Herbert just basically like dished it around, and I don't know, like it just felt like I didn't tune into that game the most as I did the other ones, but it felt like that. I mean, Justin Herbert moved down the field like 2 or 3 times and made like amazingly, and they scored off them all. And then other than that, it just felt like both teams were just kind of like sort of in a deadlock. I mean, Carr threw like 2 or 3 interceptions, and the Raiders' offense looked kind of meh, more compared to like the Chargers' offense. But overall, this was a really good divisional battle. This is still a really good game. It came down to like basically the last drive almost, and Chargers were able to be the team that won it. Now going into the Thursday against the Chiefs, that's going to be a fun game. It's another division game, but It's just going to be fun to see if they can carry over what they did against the Raiders. When it comes to the Raiders, they didn't look terrible. I mean, Carr had some issues with some throws, obviously. And, I mean, Devontae Adams had a really good game. Darren Waller had an all right game. And then for the Chargers, like, Eckler had a really quiet game. Mike Williams did nothing. So this felt like a weird divisional game, honestly, where a lot of the smaller name guys seemed to be doing all the stuff for the Chargers. And then for the Raiders, it was just a weird game for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go into next week. And, I mean, both teams are looking... I mean, obviously the Chargers were the team who won, but both teams were definitely looking forward to take some steps in the right direction next week. And what ended up being, I think, one of the biggest shockers of the week is the Giants won. I mean, wow, what a game. The Giants beat the Titans, and Daniel Jones had a really bad interception late. I remember watching. He had the running back on a swing route, and he had, like... There was, like, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. And he... Literally, like, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. He should have thrown it to the running back. Running back's wide naked. He waits for that 3 Mississippi, then throws an awful interception that literally just goes literally into the hands of the DB, basically. He just went and picked it off right there. Like, I mean, he literally cut in front of the running back to get it when the running back was wide open, but he just threw it so late, and he got ripped apart for that. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, Daniel Jones didn't do anything too amazing, but he did all right. He had some good, like, naked boots that he did, and some good boots that got him some good yards. Saquon Barkley looks like he might be him again. I mean, he had a monster game. The Titans were just weird, it felt like. They just really didn't do anything all that right. It felt like they just couldn't, like, even though it just felt like they couldn't escape the Giants. And the longer they let the Giants sit around and everything, it felt like the more and more the Titans were semi-losing confidence. But the more it felt like the Giants were gaining confidence, like, oh my gosh, we're actually in this game. We have a chance. And then it comes down to the last drive, or not the last drive, but it comes down, it will in a second, but it comes down to, like, the Giants' last drive. They're bringing it down. They scored the touchdown, and it's a big decision. It's like, do you go for 2 or do you go for 1? What I've always been heard and told now at this point is, if you're on the road, you go for 2. If you're at home, you go for the tie. Whatever. So I was happy they went for 2 here. I mean, this was a great play call. I mean, it kind of looked like a bit of, like, what Mahomes did to Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the little shuttle pass and everything. Or the little, like, what is that called? The tie, whatever, like, whatever that it's like the little it's like a little, like, shuttle pass to, like, the tight end, or little, they, like, did it with the running back, like they've done, but they did it either way. They did it with Saquon, and Saquon fought his way in for 2, and he just looked amazing. I mean, this was a really good win for the Giants. They rolled the dice, they got it, and then the Titans ended up going down the field a little bit and then kicking a 40-something yarder to win, and they miss it. So it's an awesome win week 1 for the Giants, who were basically... who a lot of people did not see winning that game to begin with, but a lot of people did not see doing very well at all. Now that they won a game, I mean, it's awesome for them. And the same thing goes with them, and the same thing, I forgot to mention with the Commanders, but same thing for them, Commanders and Eagles. Right now, that division's wide open. I mean, obviously right now it's the Eagles to win compared to the other 2 teams, but for the Giants, this is a huge win. All these teams won their division this week, so they didn't lose any ground, unlike the team I'm about to talk about here soon. 3 out of the 4 teams won, and they all managed to have, like, semi-impressive wins. So, I mean, it's going to be good for them to see how they do moving forward. And for the Sunday night game, it was the Bucs against the Cowboys. And, sorry, as Cowboys fans, their season might be over. I mean, Dak going out for 6 to 8 weeks is going to be awful for them, for an already struggling offense. When he was in the game, the offense was struggling. So, the fact that he was in the game still, and they only had 3 points before he went out, and then he went out with the broken thumb towards the end, I mean... that Cowboys team is just potentially just the same thing they do every year, basically. It's honestly sad for them just to lose Dak, because, I mean, you hate to see anybody get hurt, even if it is, like, your team's worst player. You hate to see anybody get hurt. Just Dak doing with all he's dealt with. Now he has a hand injury to deal with. It just sucks for the guy. You hate to see it, but it more sucks for the Cowboys because, yeah, they don't have a good backup plan. In the last 2 years, this is something interesting. I heard, like, I was thinking about it, too, and it made me really wonder, like, Dak has had, I know they've been, like, kind of freaky injuries, but he had the ankle last year, and then he had missed a few games with this and that. You would think they'd want to get a better backup. Like, the Cowboys would want to get a little bit of a better backup in case the off chances, like, this happens. Like, for example, when they had Andy Dalton, I know Andy Dalton didn't do the best for them, but Andy Dalton's a pretty good backup quarterback to have, and now I want to say he's in New Orleans, and he's behind Jameis. So now, like, if Jameis goes down, they have a really good backup option. And there's no offense to Cooper Rush or anything, but I mean, it just felt like the Cowboys could have done a little bit better than Cooper Rush when it comes to that, but they didn't. It's whatever. CD, it's going to be interesting to see if he's a guy. A lot of people have him penciled in to be the number one, and he hasn't shown much of it yet. He had 11 targets, I think like 2 or 4 catches, if 4. So he needs to step up a little bit, and then yeah, it's just with Dak gone for the Cowboys, who knows what's going to happen for them. As for the Bucs, it was a pretty impressive win still. I mean, they played well other than some offensive line play. Leonard Fournette had a really good game on the ground. He's running all over the Cowboys. But the biggest question is going to be when it comes to the offensive line protecting Brady. Brady got hit by Parsons twice from the left tackle, and when they moved him on to Wirfs had that on lockdown. But then when Parsons go back to the other side, he seemed to have a little bit more success. So I know Brady, like Hainsey, is a new offensive lineman that isn't going to be playing as much, who hasn't played center basically at all his whole career. Now he's playing center. It's just if this offensive line can gel for the Bucs, they might be potentially pretty dangerous. Because I mean, Tom Brady still looks like he doesn't look like quite like himself. Like he doesn't look like the best he's ever looked, but he definitely doesn't look awful by any means. He still looks like he's a productive Tom Brady. So that's going to be scary for this team to watch because, yes, like I said, I think the way the Bucs played, their defense looked amazing. If Tom Brady can move it down the field and constantly get him points, because he basically got him points almost every single drive, it felt like. If he can do that, then the Bucs are going to be an issue. And for the final game of the week, it was the Broncos against Seattle. It was Russell Wilson's return to Seattle, and I mean, just what a wild game. I mean, it's just Geno Smith played amazing. I was shocked. I was sitting there watching. It's like, are we sure this is Geno Smith? Like, I mean, that first half he looked amazing. Albeit there was some blown coverage here and there, it felt like, and there was some like iffy plays. But, I mean, regardless, he made the plays and they ended up scoring, and they scored pretty much all their points in the first half. But it just, and when it came down to it, I mean, I don't know if it was like Russ was shaky or what, but it was just, Russ played like good. He could have played a little bit better. The Broncos fumbled the ball twice on the goal line and then missed a 64-yarder by a yard to lose. I mean, it's hard to tell who really won that game because, I mean, with so much going on mentally with Russell, he still played pretty good. He had 340 yards and a touchdown. He could have done a little bit better, but, I mean, like I said, they still played pretty well, and they probably should have won the game, but they fumbled the ball on the goal line twice, and that basically lost them the game. And then when it just came this week, it felt like there were so many missed kicks. I mean, like I said earlier, there's so many. And then, of course, they try a 64-yarder, and he just misses it right, and the Seahawks get a very impressive win on Monday night. So overall, for like this week 1, it was just like wild. I think like overall, dogs against the spread were like 8-7 or 7-8. It was basically like, or sorry, not against straight up. Dogs straight up were like 7-8 or 8-7, and it just felt like a wild week 1. I mean, going into the next week is going to be a lot of fun. These were a lot of fun games to watch. I mean, even college had some wild games. Like, for example, Notre Dame got upset. Texas A&M got upset. Both of them the Sun Belt teams. I mean, the whole football, it was a great football, like, full first football weekend back. The college games were exciting, too. Like I said, those two were exciting. Texas and Alabama was exciting. Came down to the last second. Sad to see Ewers get hurt. So it's just a great weekend of football. It's going to be a fun week getting back into it, and yeah, what a wild week 1, honestly. Between all the missed kicks, the fumbles, and now the torn pec and the broken hands and all the injuries. I mean, I forgot to even mention Jamal Adams. There's a rumor that he might have, I think it was his hamstring, I want to say. I was talking about it in a group chat with some people, and they thought it might be his knee. They potentially tore his ACL or something, the way he was acting because it was non-contact. And then the way he came off the field, I thought so too, but now it might be a hamstring. So that's going to be something interesting to keep up with. But yeah, when it comes to week 1, it's a wild, wild week. So love that football's back. Maybe not all the stuff that happened with it, but football's back. All the wild stuff's going to happen in one of the best leagues in the world. And now it's just going to be fun to see what happens going on in the week 2.